And we are live on YouTube. And I want to welcome everybody to the Renters Alliance Renter Town Hall. My name is Matt Losack. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Montgomery County Renters Alliance. We are the first and only regional nonprofit dedicated exclusively to renter outreach, education, organizing, and advocacy. And we are the leading co-founder of Renters United Maryland. So welcome to everybody tonight. It does take a few minutes to let everybody in, which I ought to do. There we go. Good. Let's see. There we go. Good evening, everybody. We're just getting started. Again, my name is Matt Losack. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Montgomery County Renters Alliance. We are the first and only regional nonprofit dedicated exclusively to renter outreach, education, organizing, and advocacy. And we'll just wait a couple of minutes to let everybody in the door. We're on Zoom. It takes a couple of minutes, but welcome to everybody. And then we'll introduce our panelists and get into our discussion this evening.
Matt, you want to open up the chat while we're waiting?
Good idea. Good evening, everybody. Again, this is Matt Losack, and this is the Montgomery County Renters Alliance Renter Town Hall. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Again, if you're just joining us, this is the Renters Alliance Renter Town Hall. We'll give it another 1 minute, and then we'll get started. All right, and let's begin. Again, everybody, Matt Losack here, co-founder, executive director of the Montgomery County Renters Alliance. If you have any questions or concerns that you'd like us to address, we ask you to put them in the chat, and our staff will address them as we go. Let me introduce our staff first. We have with us tonight Emily Towie, who is one of our outreach coordinators. We have Pat Beckham, one of our outreach staff, Malek Demir, one of our outreach staff, and David Mullins, our outreach director. And also we have with us Max Wilberg, who is with Governor Wes Moore's Service Year program. Our special guests tonight are Senator Sarah Love and Delegate Julie Polakovich-Carr. And of course, later on in the program, we'll be with Carmen Castro-Conroy from the Housing Initiative Partnership to talk about the tax credit, the renter tax credit program. A couple of things up front. As many of you know, we are still eagerly awaiting the Judicial Proceedings Committee to take a vote on good cause eviction. It is the Renters Alliance opinion and has been our longtime opinion for many years that just cause eviction protection, or good cause eviction protection as it's been called now, is perhaps the most important piece of renter protection that renters are seeking. Right now in the state of Maryland, with just 60 days notice at the end of a lease term, a landlord can decide not to renew the lease without any explanation, without any justification. And if a tenant stays 1 day longer than the lease term, the tenant is known as tenant holding over. And the landlord can evict a tenant on that basis. The landlord does not have to provide the reason for their motivation not to renew the lease. And it is very difficult for the tenant to defend against that, even when there might be some sense that the tenant is being retaliated against for pursuing required or promised services, for forming a tenants association, or even trying to negotiate a fairer rent, or perhaps even because of the color of their skin. But because the landlord does not have to state the reason, it allows for a whole bunch of hidden abusive motives. And so good cause eviction would require the landlord to state the reason, and presumably they would have good reason to do so. So we're hoping to get that legislation through the Judicial Proceedings Committee and then onward to the Senate as a whole. The House of Delegates last year passed the legislation 96-37, and then put it on the Senate to move it, but it got stalled there. So we're hoping this year we might see some progress. Senator Sarah Love, who is with us tonight, sits on the Judicial Proceedings Committee, and maybe she'd like to give some remarks, maybe not, on good cause, in addition to her remarks this evening on a very important bill, which is co-sponsored and lead sponsored by Delegate Julie Polakovich-Carr, on this whole issue of algorithmic rent setting, which many believe, including our Attorney General, that this is a way of price fixing, which goes against the law. So with that, let's begin our discussion with Senator Sarah Love and with Delegate Julie Polakovich-Carr, both of whom will introduce themselves with a whole lot more information than I was able to give. So welcome, Senator Love.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. As Matt said, I'm Sarah Love. I am the senator for District 16, which is Bethesda, parts of Chevy Chase, and parts of Potomac. And I am the proud sponsor in the Senate of the AI rent price fixing algorithm bill. I know Delegate Polakovich-Carr is going to say that's so much better than I did. But Delegate, you want to do an introduction?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Hi, everybody. Great to be with you as well. I'm Delegate Julie Polakovich-Carr. I represent District 17, which is Rockville and most of Gaithersburg.
So Delegate Polakovich-Carr and I are working on this bill, which is really interesting. And I'll let her do sort of more of the deep dive, since she was the brainchild behind this, and really she brought it to me, and I'm very appreciative. But you know, some of you may have heard or read about the lawsuits against RealPage, and I know Matt just mentioned the Attorney Brown has filed one, as have attorney generals in about 10 other states and the Department of Justice. And these lawsuits allege illegal price fixing based on the use of RealPage's they call it a revenue management tool that uses non-public proprietary information to set rental prices. So our bill is not about RealPage specifically, but it is about using algorithms that use non-public proprietary data to set rent prices. So in short, what it is landlords across a market will share private non-public data regarding their rental properties, including foot traffic, occupancy, vacancy rates, current rents, as opposed to the rents advertised, and on and on. And then the software compiles this along with public information on rents and units, and that sets prices for the landlords. And then the landlords can go ahead and charge these prices, knowing that their competitors will also charge these prices and they won't be undercut. And so Delegate Polakovich-Carr and I are really targeting the use of these platforms, not any particular company or any particular landlord. So that's the overview. I'll turn it over to Delegate Polakovich-Carr. One flag, I'm happy to talk about good cause. I am on judicial proceedings. I was in the House for 6 years. I voted for the bill multiple times. But I do have a hard stop at 7:30. So just flagging that for you all. Julie?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. And this has been a great partnership between Senator Love and I working on this legislation. She did a great job giving an overview of, what the bill is, what the problem is with this software. And folks probably have been tracking this in the news because this has been a growing problem, not just in Maryland, but across the country where landlords are turning to this software. And as was mentioned, there is kind of a leading company, RealPage, that offers this software, but they are by no means the only product in this market space that is using artificial intelligence to help landlords basically skirt and flout the law. Actually, I just want to share, a quote from a couple of years ago. I think it really helps, solidify like what the problem is, because I'm guessing probably nobody on this call is like an antitrust lawyer. I'm certainly not. I'm not even a lawyer. And I think for some people, it's kind of hard to wrap our brains around like, well, what exactly is the problem with this software? And several years ago, the then chair of the Federal Trade Commission basically, outlined the problem like this and said, is it okay for a guy named Bob to collect confidential price strategy information from all the participants in a market and then tell everybody how they should price? So for instance, like, is it okay for a guy named Bob to be collecting data from a bunch of landlords about what they plan to do with rent prices? She goes on to say, if it isn't okay for a guy named Bob to do it, then it probably isn't okay for an algorithm to do it either. But the problem that we see in our Maryland law, and actually other states and our federal government have realized as well, is that our antitrust and our consumer protection laws have not kept up with the rapid pace of change in terms of technology. So, some companies think that they have found a legal way to have landlords share this proprietary, non-public, confidential data, and they think it's legal. Many attorney generals, including our own here in Maryland, don't think that's the case. We don't think that's the case. So really what we want to make sure happens is that this practice stops, that landlords cannot use this type of software that is based off of their competitors' private data to be able to set rent prices. That doesn't mean landlords can't use software to figure out what's going on in terms of their own properties, to track vacancies. Doesn't mean they can't look at market analysis to see what's happening. Those are types of products that have been around for a long time. It's this sharing of data amongst competitors in a marketplace that really is the problem that we're seeking to address with this bill. So we both have had our bill hearings in the House and Senate respectively on this legislation. I'll say this: the legislation specifically just says landlords cannot use this kind of software. I think my hearing was just last week. It's sometimes hard to remember with as everything becomes a blur during the legislative session. But we're seeing bills like this being introduced in a number of states around the country. So there's clearly a lot of interest in addressing this because we know it's become such a big problem. And I'll just say here in Maryland, the investigation done by Attorney General Anthony Brown's office found about 100,000 apartments and rental units across the state that are being managed by landlords that are using this kind of software. And the Washington Post also did an analysis that they published last month, and they identified more than 200 properties across the state. And I'll note that those were disproportionately in Montgomery County. 86 of those properties were located in Montgomery County. And so Senator Love and I both know that there are properties in our district, that there are literally thousands of renters in our districts that are being impacted by this because their landlords are using this software. And it has a real impact on renters. The Biden White House back in December, the Council of Economic Advisors did an analysis and found that for the DC metro area, when landlords are using this type of software, renters are paying on average an extra $112 a month. So that's $112 a month extra just to fuel basically corporate greed. So we're very concerned about this. The bill would shut down this practice. We think it's a good time to take this on because thankfully not very many landlords are using it yet. It is happening here in Maryland, but it's not, uniform across the board. So we kind of want to get out ahead of this problem before it becomes, ingrained in the marketplace.
Well, I can tell both of you, first of all, congratulations on picking something very important to the renter community. In the buildings that we've been in, they are buildings that use RealPage. I know that the Grand in Chevy Chase, for example, is one. Another one was, what is it? The Willard, not the Willard. Yeah, the Willard. Also a property that uses it. And people have come to us and asked us, is this legal? And I promise you that in those properties, which are upper end properties, it's more than $100 a month that these guys are getting from them. So if they're hurting, we can only imagine what it's like for middle and working families and low income families who might be subject to this. So this is a very important issue. All of us who rent our homes, $100 a month could mean a lot for a lot of people. Senator Love, anything to add?
Nope. I will note there's a question in the chat. Without AI software or any software, how is rent established? How does the market work regarding the amount of rent? And I'm sure, the folks at the Renters Alliance can talk more about exactly how rent is established. But one thing I want to emphasize about what Delegate Polakovich-Carr said is, this isn't saying you can't use software or AI to set rents. What we're really looking at is sharing non-public proprietary data to do that. There's still a lot of public data out there. You can go on apartments.com and see what other apartments are renting for. There are trade publications that talk about these things. Landlords do talk to each other. They do have people go in and say, hey, what's your 1-bedroom renting for these days? And all of that is fine. It's when they all get together and share this non-public data, this proprietary data, that is then used to set prices that we're really going after. So I hope that answers the question in the chat, and I'm sure others can add to that.
Well, I can address sort of the small landlord approach to rent, which is, what is my overhead and how much do I think I can get in profit? It's sort of a simple calculation. And yeah, you might check to see what the rest of the market is doing or what your neighbor who also has a condominium that they're renting, what they're getting and how much profit margin they could get. A good landlord, we had this discussion with a property manager complaining about the good cause thing, saying, we can't make any money. And I'm going like, well, then you shouldn't be in the landlord business, because landlords should set a rent that covers their expenses and then sets a profit margin. That is what they want to make. And then let the apartment at that basis. And if you haven't done that, if you've only set your rent to cover just what it costs you to manage the property, well, you're not going to make any money over time. So you need to have some sense of how to be a good landlord. And you can be sure that a corporate landlord does this extremely well and evaluates the market thoroughly. But this AI or this algorithmic technology is so expansive and has the ability to talk about everybody getting in a room and setting a price. This is hundreds of thousands of people getting into a room and setting a price in a way that is so scientifically beyond the human element that it really takes market competition right out of it. So definitely extremely important. Delegate Carr?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on that point, how else does the market work in this regard? And I'll say there are other, products, including software that's out there on the market. Another one that I think is extensively used is called CoStar. And that really is taking like a market-based approach. It's looking at what is like the trajectory in terms of rents. They are, scraping apartment listings online. I think back in the day, and maybe even still, they would have people calling around to find out like what are particular apartments or rental homes going for, and then they're compiling all that information and packaging it in a way that a landlord could digest that information and make a decision for themselves about what the rent should be that they're charging, just to give them a sense of, okay, what else is happening in the market. And I think one of the pieces that really sets apart this AI-based software is that it's not just that they're using this confidential proprietary data that like tenants could never get access to, unlike the product that we just talked about, where that is public information or it is potentially knowable by a tenant, that it's also prospective, that it's looking not just at what has happened, with rents up to today, but where are they potentially going? And that's not information that would otherwise be available. And that's what's really concerning about all of this.
I see another question in the chat for either the delegate or the senator about other AI platforms. Do either of you care to address?
So the one that asks, when you say confidential proprietary data is shared across multiple AI platforms, does this include personal identifiable information of residents? So as far as we know, no. What we're talking about is some of the things that I mentioned: foot traffic, how many people come in and view these apartments, executed leases. So a landlord may advertise something at this rent, but then give these discounts. And so then they actually rent at this amount. So that sort of data, not the personally identified information. With respect to that data, a lot of that data is protected under Maryland law in a number of different ways. One of which is an online Data Protection Act that I proudly sponsored for the last several years and got through last year, that does protect that information.
I should also remind everybody, Senator Love is also an attorney. So we thank her for her knowledge and experience. That's a good question coming from Judy Rudolph, one of our renter activists up in Rockville. If the bill does pass, and it is determined that there's a collusion and price fixing going on, what possible compensation could tenants pursue if they were a victim of this collusion?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Judy. Good to hear from you. Well, I can answer this on a couple of levels. So under the bill, I'll say it is purely prospective. So any lease that has already been signed, should the bill become law, could still stand. The bill would not undo any existing lease. It would just be for leases that are signed after the law would go into effect. But that said, since our Attorney General is also concurrently pursuing a case, there is potential remedy through the courts for against RealPage and then the 6 landlord defendants that are part of that case. And I'll note that in terms of the federal lawsuit that was filed last year by the U.S. Department of Justice, like one of the landlord defendants on that case has already settled and agreed to stop using RealPage. I can't remember if there was maybe some other, Senator Love, I don't know if you remember any of the other details on that settlement, if there was anything to help tenants, or if, again, that might have just been perspective. I'll double check that and see if I can circle back. But I will also just note that there are something like 20 class action lawsuits that have been filed in the courts around the country by tenants. So, there is also that option for people who feel that they have, suffered because of this.
Senator Love, any thoughts on how somebody might go around creating a class action lawsuit in this regard?
Find a really good lawyer.
Well, we got one here, but you're busy doing other things.
So, yeah.
It's an interesting thing. I think we will also consult with the Attorney General's office on that. But it would be good for all of these people who've been soaked to possibly get some kind of compensation. But first things first, let's get the law passed and see where the Attorney General's enforcement can kick in. Well, Senator Love does have a hard stop at 7:30, so I did want to corner her and ask, how are things going in JPR with the good cause legislation and where things stand and what your thoughts are on the legislation?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. Just very quickly to sort of set the stage a little bit. I don't know if any of you had a chance to look at the 4-hour briefing that JPR had on housing issues. Really, really very interesting, trying to figure out how we support our tenants and promote tenants' rights and ensure that we have housing, affordable housing, and that missing middle housing. And then just to talk about last year, that was the first time it came over to the Senate. So the House had looked at it many, many times, Environment and Transportation had, but last year was the first time it came over to the Senate. And as they were beginning to work through the governor's bill on housing and Delegate Stewart's bill on housing, the bridge came down. And so then JPR had a lot of other things that it had to manage. So with that stage set, I will tell you that the chair has said he believes we will pass good cause this year. There will be some changes. He wants to make sure that that we do maintain that balance, that we ensure renters' rights, and we don't put too many things out there that would, I don't want to say prevent. I'm trying to remember how he phrased it, but that we still want to incentivize housing. So one of the things he talked about was in Montgomery County, we have both rent control and vacancy control. And then to add good cause on top may be just too much. So there may be a preemption on the vacancy control that he's looking at. There are some other issues that he's looking at with respect to what is a material breach, what is a significant breach. You know, these words may seem minor, but they actually have a big impact on how things go. So the bill will be workshopped tomorrow. I'm not sure who's working on it. I don't think I'm on that workshop. At least I am not as of right now. But I can commit to you that the chair said we are passing it this year.
Well, of course, what matters is what gets passed. And I suppose any form of it would be some progress. But we've also been working with the landlord lobbyists for as long as we've been around. And I don't think if you said that they had to clean their sidewalks, they wouldn't scream hell's bells that the sky is falling and that they're leaving town. But the bottom line
100%.
is the landlord industry has got a lot of money to make in a high demand market like ours. They're working very hard to tie it to weakening rent stabilization in some way. We don't see the connection, and I don't think Delegate Janelle Wilkins sees the connection. So we are going to track this very closely. It has been proven with data that highly regulated areas that protect the renter population still have the highest building rates in the country. And that areas with low regulation or no regulation often still have no building going on and boarded up housing, because it's a low demand area. And that the real part that distinguishes the two is demand. And so we understand industries do not like being regulated. That's nothing new. But we are pretty confident that if they say that the whole world is going to fall because of this, we're not buying it. So we're counting on you, Senator Love, to, what's that?
I said, trust me, I've gone up against the tech industry and the fossil fuel industry,
Yeah.
so
We
I'm
figure you've
aware
got
of
your
these things.
experience.
Yep.
Yeah. So
So
we appreciate
just
whatever advocacy you could put in, the common sense that should go along with it. We understand the politics. The landlords have the money, we have the numbers. So we will see how things go. And we hope that the bill stays as strong for renters as possible. But it's 7:29. Senator Love, we sure do appreciate you coming on. We hope we can have you back as a celebration for the passage of this bill, and look forward to your support for renters' rights down the road. So thank you for joining us.
thank you, everyone. Appreciate all that you do. Take care.
Anyway, so Delegate Polakovich-Carr, any other thoughts?
Yeah, there's one other area that I want to touch on because we've been focused on the impact on rents with this legislation. But I also want to point out that as these investigations have been going on around the country about the use of this software, that we also see a really disturbing trend for more rental units staying vacant because landlords realize that they can actually make more money by leaving units vacant. And that kind of goes against the long held perception in the industry, which is no, vacancy is bad for your bottom line. And so typically if vacancy rates start to creep up, landlords would historically lower rents to fill those vacancies. But what landlords have not just seen with this software, but have been encouraged to do with this software is actually to keep their vacancy rates higher. And one example that the news outlet ProPublica reported on is a very large landlord in the Midwest. I think they had something like 40,000 rental units in their portfolio. And they found by using this software that they could double their vacancy rate which for them meant about 1,000, roughly 1,000 apartments more staying vacant, and they still were making more money. So, you know, Matt, when you talk about demand, we know there's real demand for people to live in these apartments, but some of this is also manufactured demand, where, you know, it's the property manager making a choice.
Forgive me for not being as smart as you, but can you explain why the interest of a landlord to have vacancy? I've never quite gotten that.
Yeah, well, what they have found with using this software is if they take kind of rather than a unit by unit trying to maximize that unit's profit, or I guess revenue, if they're looking across their portfolio, if apartments are being held vacant rather, it increases the demand for the other units, and the tenants will pay a higher price. So even though there are units not making money for at least some period of time, they're getting more than enough revenue off the units they're filling to not only offset that, but to increase profits overall.
Wow. Wow. That's interesting. I've always wondered how that worked in the commercial market when we had seen so many storefronts empty for so many years, and wondered, why do they do that? What is the interest in doing that? And maybe it's related in some way. Do we have any other questions or concerns to be raised for Delegate Polakovich-Carr? Then, and Delegate Carr, any last words?
No, just thank you for the opportunity. I'll put my contact information in the chat. You know, thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's always great to connect. And if there's any, you know, District 17 residents on here, Rockville or Gaithersburg, and you have this or anything else on your mind, please reach out.
Thank you, Delegate Julie Polakovich-Carr, also the chair of our Montgomery County House delegation. And I believe you're the deputy minority or majority whip?
Yes.
All right, so we have leaders on this channel. So thank you, Delegate Polakovich-Carr, for joining us. And now we'll move on to the next. You're welcome to stay as long as you like, but we have a feeling you're busy as all get out. All right, moving along. Next up, there is a program in the state of Maryland that supports low-income tenants with the tax credit program. And I'm sure that our guest, Carmen Castro Conroy from the Housing Initiative Partnership, will explain that many people just don't take advantage of it. So we want to make sure that we promote it and people understand how to take advantage of it. So welcome, Carmen Castro Conroy.
Thank you, Matt, for the introduction. And yes, I want to tell you all about the state renters tax credit program. But before I go into that, I also want to tell you about who I'm with, who is a Housing Initiative Partnership. So let me see if I can share the screen. Please let me know if you can see our piece with our logo. And okay, so briefly, Housing Initiative Partnership is a HUD-approved housing counseling agency serving Montgomery County residents. We're an independent nonprofit, also a nonprofit housing developer with 35 years of existence. Started in Prince George County. We still have our main office in Hyattsville, but we expanded to serve both homeowners and tenants in Montgomery County through our one-on-one individual private free housing counseling program, where we serve tenants through rental counseling. And you can see a little bit of what it is that we do when we have sessions with clients. We serve first-time home buyers through our pre-purchase counseling program, and we serve homeowners through our post-purchase and foreclosure prevention program. In addition, we provide home buyer education. That's an 8-hour class that we offer once a month, and it's virtual. We do tenant outreach, where we have information sessions every other Tuesday. They're virtual, English and Spanish. We also have staff in eviction court providing guidance to tenants. And we also provide outreach to families at risk of eviction. We have 2 more programs, one called Home Sharing, where we match homeowners with home seekers free of charge. We're always recruiting homeowners who may have a spare space, bedrooms, basements in their homes to rent out with matches that we screen with criminal background check and credit report and verification of income for a successful match. And finally, our Financial Empowerment Center, where we provide financial counseling one-on-one in partnership with the City of Gaithersburg to city residents. Our contact information is down here. You can always call our number. We provide sessions in person, by phone, and virtually, and we'll be happy to work with any of you. So let me take you now to just a brief summary before I go into more details of what it is, the Renter's Tax Credit Program. If you've never heard of it, it's not a new program. It's been in existence since 1980. It's under the Department of Assessments and Taxation. So it's a program that's not just available in Montgomery County, but throughout the state of Maryland. Initially, when it was created, it was focused on renters 60 or older, or those with a disability. But the program expanded in 1984 to include renters under the age of 60 with dependents. So we'll talk about that. Very quickly, if you want to take a picture of the eligibility, you can see here who qualifies. These are the basic criteria for eligibility. The program is available once a year. The application period starts in February, and the deadline is every year, October 1st. We provide assistance with the application, but you don't need to have assistance if you can do this yourself. You can go on the website, and I'm going to take you there and show you how the program works. But what it is a tax credit from the state to tenants that are eligible. If you qualify for the credit and you're approved, you can get a check for $1,000 directly to you. And Montgomery County also matches that amount by half. So there could be an additional $500. So a total of $1,500. It's very simple. It's an application that's only 2 pages. It's going to require information from the previous year. So for this 2025 round, you're providing information based on the rent you pay in 2024 calendar year. So let me go ahead and take you to the site. So this is the Department of Assessments and Taxation, maryland.gov, dat.maryland.gov. And you can Google Renter's Tax Credit Application, DAT, Maryland, and it's going to come up. It's going to take you right into this page for Renter's Tax Credit. Homeowners have a similar program. It's called the Homeowners Tax Credit Program. The criteria is different. People making less than $60,000 could be eligible for a property tax credit, but I'm going to focus on the Renter's Tax Credit this evening. So this page will give you information on how the program works, who qualifies. It's going to have a description of the 2 groups that may be eligible, anyone aged 60 or over or 100% disabled. And we're going to look into the form to see who's eligible. And also those under age of 60 with dependents under the age of 18 that you can show as dependents on your income taxes are going to go by chart 2. So by going into this page, you can get all this information, but I'm going to take you to the actual application. So if you click here, you can see the application printed, completed, submitted by mail. There is also a way to submit the application online.
Carmen, did you want to be screen sharing right now?
Oh, sorry.
There we
I
go.
thought I was taking everyone to this other
No,
page.
but we were listening to your voice.
Oh,
No, I could see Carmen's screen.
okay. Let me see if you can see the application now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can. There we go.
So this is what the application looks like. The 2025 Renter's Tax Credit Application, also known as RTC-1 form. filing deadline, October 1st, 2025. Like I said, you can also apply online. Before you apply online, make sure you have a working email address and that you go ahead and scan a copy of your lease and a copy of your income taxes, because once you complete the form, you need to upload those two attachments. So it's very simple. The information that's required, who is the leaseholder, Social Security number or tax ID number, date of birth, address, current marital status, name of spouse, principal address. You're going to check whether you're applying as someone age 60 or over, totally disabled, or under age 60 with dependents. It's also going to require that you provide what's your rent or what was your rent in 2024. If you moved out, like let's say half year, you moved out, you will have to provide the two leases. So they want to see evidence of rent paid in 2024. At least 6 months of rent being paid may qualify you for the program. All the required information will be on page 1, including the rental information and household members information. If there are any dependents with income, you also need to disclose that. So this application is one application per household. And page 2, very simple. I usually look at the first page of your 1040 income taxes to look at the line item for wages or rental income or business income. And that goes by applicant, co-tenant, or other household members. For those not filing income taxes because you only get Social Security income, you have to provide Form SSA 1099. And that's listed here. And the income that you receive through Social Security benefits. Then you total the amounts. You check a couple boxes if you have filed taxes. We always tell our clients, wait until you file your taxes so we can tell you whether you qualify. But if you're not obligated to file taxes, just show us what's your income from Social Security or any other sources, and we'll let you know. And the certification that's signed, dated, and that's it. 2 pages, 1 form, attached copy of your lease, income taxes, mailed to the state. I always tell my clients, keep a copy of what you mail if you're mailing it, and if you can save the receipt, and then you can always call the office. It's in Baltimore. They're open Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 3:30. And make sure that they have your application. If you do online, then you don't have to worry. You get updates via email. So let's see who qualifies. The application is 4 pages. 2 pages is what you complete, and the last 2 pages is all information about who's eligible and instructions on all the information that you have to provide. So you can see chart 1. Right here, age 60 or older or 100% disabled. It's based on income and the amount of rent you pay. So there's column A and column B. So column A is like, let's say, maximum income. So it can go up to $73,000. And this is household income. And then maximum, column B would be monthly rent. So let's say, pick, I don't know, $53,000. So let's say your income was no more than $53,000, but your rent was more than $1,400. That means you're eligible. So you have to look at column A less than, column B more than, and that makes you eligible. If you're not sure, you can call our office and we'll tell you over the phone and then schedule an appointment if you need assistance. So again, if you find yourself eligible, you could get a direct check payment from the state of Maryland for up to $1,000, and this is once a year. And in addition, you get an additional check for $500. Anyone age 70 or older that never heard about this program and may be eligible, you can do 3 applications, 3 years retroactive. Then we look at chart 2. Households under age of 60 with dependents under the age of 18. The chart is completely different. So you can see, for instance, a household of 4, maximum income 31,200. All the information that you need is literally on the form itself. Again, Department of Assessment and Taxation, Maryland.gov. This is called the Renters Tax Credit Program. RTC-1, deadline October 1st, 2025. You can also do it online. If you attach a copy of your lease and a copy of your income taxes or proof of income, submit it to the state. It takes about 3 months for the state to process applications. If approved, you get a direct check in the mail. If denied, they can also notify you by mail. But you can always call the office and check on the status of your application. Any questions? I don't know if I went too fast. But I definitely have time for questions if that's okay with everyone.
Any questions for Carmen?
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat yet about the tax credit. But Carmen, I had a different question for you about home sharing program. If people want to put their tax credit questions in the chat. What is like the turnaround time? Like if someone knows like they're facing eviction, is referring them to home sharing like a good thing to do, or this takes like several months and it's not going to solve an emergency?
That's a good question. So you can like go on our website right now under the home sharing program, and you'll see what's currently available. And we have, as of this morning, we have 12 homes that are renting out bedrooms or basements or ADUs.
Okay.
However, the preference for the homeowners is for single adults.
Okay.
Some homeowners can take couples. But most of the homeowners, regardless of the space, their preference is gonna be for single adults. So what we do is that if you refer someone into our program, we'll do all the screening, background check, credit report, verification of income and rental history. We conduct an interview, and like the next day, we could be showing them place.
Oh, okay. So if they pass through the screening, everything else after that could move quickly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we've been able to like move people within 2 weeks.
And then screening, is that like background, like is there a credit check involved
We
or?
take care of everything. Everything is done like online for the background check, credit report. That's like there's no fee. It's free. We do it in our office. We do have the interview has to be in person, but everything else we can get started.
Okay. And is there a mandatory credit score?
No,
No.
no.
Okay.
There's no number. What we want to see is what's like showing on the report, and if there's an explanation, if the score is very low, we share that with the homeowner.
Okay. Okay.
But no one has been turned down because of credit.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Anything else for Carmen Castro Conroy from the Housing Initiative Partnership, one of our partners in seeking stable, affordable, quality housing in Montgomery County and beyond?
I see one question. I'm not sure if this is for Carmen. It says, would you describe this program as an anti-poverty program for folks who are tenants? I don't know if they're referring to the tax credit program or to the home sharing program.
If it's talking about the renter's tax credit, that was the purpose behind the creation of this program many years ago, because there was initially the homeowner's tax credit program that was giving tax relief to homeowners, but then it kind of discriminated tenants, because tenants, regardless, I mean, they pay rent, and it's like paying property taxes indirectly on the rent. So first, the state identified a group that could benefit from this tax credit, and it was those 60 and older. And then they expanded to include low-income households.
Okay, thank you. And then someone asked if they're under 60 years old, but they're a caregiver for an elderly parent, can we claim that parent as a dependent to qualify for the program?
If
For
the
tax
parent
credit.
lives with them,
Yeah.
yes. If it's a member of the household, like when the chart shows age 60 or older or 100% disabled, I've had clients who had a disabled child that
Mhm.
qualify under that criteria because there was a member of the household that was disabled. So it
Okay.
could be a member of the household over the age of 60. They have to show on their lease too, or any other evidence that this is their primary residence. But yes, that would qualify them.
Okay, good to know. And then someone else asked, does it go by household occupants? They're a single mom with 2 kids, or is it strictly by the income? And I guess you can look on the chart to see
Right.
for the
So
number of people.
number of people in the household would only apply to those age 60 and under, with dependents under the age of 18. Because the other day I had a presentation and someone was a single adult under 60. So no dependents, single adults under 60 would not be eligible.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And
And that's
Carmen,
all
I'm
the
sure you
questions
said
I
this, but can folks reach out to you to help them, guide them through this process if they want to avail themselves?
Definitely. So I want to share our intake number, 301-916-5946. It's our intake line. We answer that line Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. If anybody is interested in either the renter's tax credit or the homeowner's tax credit, if you know anyone that would have to make less than 60,000 to qualify for a property tax credit, but we always find homeowners who, for whatever reason, are within that income bracket. We'll be happy to provide assistance with the application.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions or issues for Carmen to address?
I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat.
In that case, we will let you have dinner.
Thank you for inviting us. We'll be happy to address this program or anything else we can do to help always.
Thank you very much. Carmen Castro Conroy with the Housing Initiative Partnership, a friend and another champion for renters' rights and stable, affordable, quality housing. Thank you to the Housing Initiative Partnership and for you. So thanks, Carmen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's get into some other things that we think people should know about. Emily, will you take us through ULTA and code?
Yes, first, can I answer a question in the chat? So someone asked about resources for evictions. So if you are facing eviction, and you've started the court proceedings, so you've received a court summons, there is county money available through Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services, limited funds to help prevent an eviction. So the requirements are that you haven't received a grant from Health and Human Services in the past 12 months, and that your household income is at or below 60% of the area median income. There's a chart where you can look to see that, but I believe so for one person, 60% would be, I believe it's 63,000. So if you're below that, you could potentially qualify. So you could receive up to $3,000 to use either to pay and stay, to pay off the judgment and cancel your eviction, or use it for a security deposit to relocate somewhere else. But what the county will look for is to see that you have a workable plan in place. So like if you have an extremely high balance, it's not going to be sustainable to use the $3,000 grant and pay off this one judgment, but knowing you have like another court date coming the next month and the month after that. So there is, and in order to apply for this, it's through Health and Human Services. You can walk in person, and I'll put this information in the chat. But there's 3 different offices. There's one in Silver Spring on Georgia Ave. There's one in Germantown on Middlebrook, and then there's one in Rockville, which is also where the Crisis Center is on Picard. They're requesting that you bring all the documents with you, which will include like photo ID, income documents, your rental ledger, your court papers. They're requesting you bring all those documents with you in order to be assigned a caseworker. You can also call 311 or email if you are unable to go in person, but they really recommend that you do go in person. But if you are like behind on your rent, just say you're behind by 1 month, but your landlord hasn't filed against you in court, unfortunately, you won't be qualified for the emergency grant from Health and Human Services. You have to be in the eviction proceedings, which while that starts with the 10-day notice, the county's requirement is having the court summons. And if any, yes, David put the locations in the chat. I can also link the documents, but if anyone watching is facing eviction and wants to know more about it, you can email or call us, and we can guide you through this. And then back to with Ulta. Unless there were any other questions.
Did we get to Evelyn's question about the 60-day notice?
Oh, no. What can you do? So if you receive 60-day notice of at the end of your lease, so currently in Maryland, this is what we were talking about earlier, there are no good cause eviction protections, meaning that as long as towards the end of your lease, as long as the landlord provides you with that 60-day notice that they want to non-renew you, they don't have to provide a reason. So you could have been on time, you could have lived there for 5 years. They don't have to provide a reason. So of course we see, unfortunately, them not having to provide a reason can result in landlords not renewing you for retaliatory reasons or like discrimination. So maybe you started a tenants association there, or you were complaining about not receiving your services, something like that. The landlord can use the fact that they don't have to provide a reason to non-renew you. And unfortunately, there's like very little defense. It's very hard to prove retaliation. If you think you got non-renewed for being the president of your tenants association, though, please reach out to us and we can put you in touch with a lawyer. There's pro bono lawyers available, which we'll talk about later. But generally, like I said, unless there was something like very specific, like, oh, you filed a complaint about the mold and then you got the notice right after that. It might be easier to argue something like that, but in general, if you get non-renewed, there's nothing to really do, which is why we're making the big push for good cause, so that tenants can be protected and have more than 60 days before they have to move.
But get in touch with us. We would like to see and talk to you about what's going on and see whether or not there is any way to develop at least an evidence pattern that might be used by an attorney to defend against a landlord. We have been able to figure out other ways besides the legal ways to pressure landlords to back off unfair tenant holding over eviction processes. So don't just accept it. Let's see what we can do to help, and we'll give you our best advice. Non-legal, we're not lawyers, but we do know a thing or two about the law, and we also know lawyers if necessary.
And I see another question about asking about the Health and Human Services grant, the up to $3,000. Does that still apply for 1 month's rent and security deposit? I believe it does. That if your security deposit is only $1,000, then you'd still be under the $3,000 limit to also put towards your first month. But I do know that they're no longer offering storage and movers for if you were looking to relocate. But I do believe they can cover up to 1 month's rent if you're still under the $3,000. But a Health and Human Services caseworker would be able to tell you more about that.
And they can also call 311 and ask for a caseworker at Health and Human Services to get more definitive information if they need it.
Yes. And switching gears, to one of our resources, is Office of Landlord Tenant Affairs, or you'll hear us say ALTA. They're housed under the Department of Housing and Community Affairs. So they are a resource for you to file complaints if you're having an issue with your landlord. So these kinds of issues would be like a ledger discrepancy, where you see that you've been charged late, but you paid on time, or you submitted a payment and it's $200 short on your ledger, or there's a provision in your lease that doesn't sound right to you, something like that. So the first thing you should do is try to talk to your landlord about it. Schedule a meeting with them, talk to them, see, turn in your receipt for the missing money order, whatever it may be, and see if you can resolve it with them. If they're unable to, or like unwilling to, you can escalate it by filing a complaint with Landlord Tenant Affairs. So you can do that by calling 311 and asking to speak to Landlord Tenant Affairs. But if you're able to do it online, I always recommend going online, because then you can save a copy of your complaint for your records. And there's a link to do the form, which I'll put in the chat. So once you make the complaint, they'll assign an investigator to look into the issue. They'll contact you, contact the landlord, see what's going on and see if they can mediate, come to a resolution. The other kind of complaint would be for code enforcement. So this has to do with the maintenance and condition of your unit. So think broken appliances, pests, things of that sort. So those are going to go to, it's still under the Department of Housing, but it's going to go to the Code Enforcement Division. So similarly, you can call 311 and ask to speak to code enforcement and file the complaint over the phone, or you can go online, and we'll put that in the chat. And similar, they will assign an inspector to come look at the property, and if it's a broken dishwasher, to actually come look at it. If they see that there is a code violation, they'll instruct the landlord to make the repair in a certain amount of time. And just like with landlord tenant complaints, you should always try to resolve it first. So if something's broken, put a request in your online portal, or go down to the office and speak to them and put in a maintenance request. If a reasonable amount of time has gone by and it hasn't been addressed, or hasn't been addressed adequately, then you can escalate by filing a complaint with code enforcement. And if you want to know, like, what do you mean by like a reasonable amount of time? So I mean, if it's you have like there's a flood in your sink, like that's going to be like a very urgent issue that should be handled pretty quickly. If there's a broken light bulb in the living room, maybe that can take a little bit longer. So you use your judgment. And if you're not sure how to file a complaint, you're having trouble using the form online, or you're not sure if this is a landlord-tenant matter or a code enforcement matter, you can always reach out to us, and we can guide you where you need to go.
Right. How many code enforcement officers does it take to change a light bulb? We have to be careful about what we're directing them to do, but I want to underscore a couple of things that Emily said. First of all, we expect you all tenants, to try to resolve these issues with the property manager or the landlord first. So it's key that you will have done that and exhausted that opportunity. The enforcement mechanisms of the county are there when your property management or your landlord are not responsive in a reasonable way, or hostile to what your request is. That's when you escalate it for enforcement. If you're not sure, the Renters Alliance exists to also guide you through that. So we have a lot of experience with this, and we could say, you know what, this is really not a complaint that you should file. Here's what we think you should do, or this is one we think you should file, and we'll help you file it and make sure that you get follow-up from the appropriate investigator. So use us for guidance and advice if you think you're going to go into a complaint scenario with your property management or your landlord. I also want to talk a little bit about another program called the Access to Counsel and Evictions Program. This is a state-funded program for renters who are facing eviction, who are at 50% or below area median income. So it's intended to help working and low-income renters who cannot afford a lawyer. And we got funding through the state so that those tenants could seek legal advice and get representation in court when facing an eviction. So if you think that you're facing an eviction and you need to be represented in court, you can reach out to us or you can contact one of two legal representative sources in Montgomery County, and they are Casa de Maryland and the Legal Services, the Maryland Legal Aid Bureau based here in Montgomery County. Thank you, David, for putting that in the chat. There's the two numbers, so you can contact them directly. If you're not sure, again, you can also reach out to us and let us know that you're potentially facing an eviction and that you might need to be guided to these resources. We want to make sure that people who go to court are represented by an attorney. And obviously, we want to make sure that everybody who has to go to court, is summoned to go to court, does go to court. If you miss your court date, no matter how good of a case you will have a judgment against you. The landlord will win automatically if you don't show. And if you do show, as for all of us, courts can be a little bit complicated sometimes. And there are details in a court case, even a basic court case like a landlord-tenant one, that lawyers are trained to understand that you may not be. So we urge you to take advantage of this program if you're eligible. And if you're not eligible because you're a higher income tenant, then certainly let us know what's going on, and we can either guide you to paid legal services or pro bono legal services and get you hooked up that way, or just give you some good advice on how to handle it. So that's very important.
Matt,
Yes, go ahead.
can I add, if you're either like Maryland Legal Aid or CASA isn't able to represent you, maybe you don't qualify for them, you can also walk into the Rockville District Court. They have a help desk center on the second floor. So they don't actually represent you, but they can give you legal advice they help you to represent yourself. So if you're trying to file a motion or something, or just kind of get advice, do I have a case here? What do they think I should do about this? They're available as well. And I'll put their address in the chat, but again, they're down in Rockville at the district court.
And last but not least, the Renters Alliance, we work across Montgomery County. We help organize tenants associations in apartment buildings. We set up information tables with information about renters' rights and resources. We work with individual tenants who are in dispute or have issues with their property or their property management or their landlord. So we urge you all to get in touch with us. If you'd like to form a tenants association, that's what we do. We think that it's extremely important that every renter community has a tenants association. It's a way to be a clearinghouse of information. It's a way to build community. Our slogan on our logo behind me that says, it doesn't always have to be about complaints, although that's important to get those resolved collectively, but also about knowing your neighbors, welcoming new neighbors to the community, and enjoying and strengthening the community through a tenants association. We hear again and again when a tenant complains to a property manager about a problem, they say that they're the only ones who are making that complaint. Well, we know that that's not true. Oftentimes, there are many people in the building who have similar complaints, and one of the ways to resolve these things more successfully is to do it collectively. So we help organize tenants associations. We strengthen existing tenants associations, and we'd love to have you invite us to your community to do that. So please reach out to us to do that. If you're running an event where you think that there are going to be a lot of tenants there who might be interested in renter resource information and their rights, invite us to have an information table. We're happy to come out and staff a table and provide information to the people coming to your event. Doesn't always have to be a renter event. Could be an event, just a community event. But if you think a lot of renters are going to be there, we'd love to be there too. So again, good cause eviction is the #1 priority for us in the Maryland General Assembly, and it is pending in the Senate. I'm not comfortable hearing, as Senator Love reported, that the chair of the Judicial Proceedings Committee, Will Roberts, is considering something that Will Smith. Our chair is William Roberts. He just had a baby. He's on my mind. Will Smith, the senator from District 20, is the chair of that committee, and he is considering a amendment to good cause, according to Senator Love, that would require rent stabilization programs that have been implemented in Montgomery County and other parts of the state to eliminate the requirement in that legislation that an apartment remain under rent stabilization when a person moves out or a family moves out. The argument against that from County Executive Mark Elrich and from us is that when a tenant moves out and the apartment remains stabilized, we preserve affordable housing. If the tenant moves out and we don't have vacancy control, and it becomes vacancy decontrol, which is what the landlords want, then we lose that apartment to the market. And so there goes one more affordable housing unit to whatever the market will bear. We are already seeing thousands of apartments being built for the high end in Montgomery County and beyond. And so there is a real argument to be made to preserve and protect our existing affordable housing stock. And the landlords will argue, well, if you don't do this, we're going to not invest in new housing. The data shows otherwise. Places of high demand like Montgomery County in the Washington, D.C. area, San Francisco, Chicago, Seattle, other places where there are high demand economic hubs of this country are high demand housing markets, and there's money to be made. And the data shows that in these highly rent regulated areas or relatively highly rent regulated areas where they have renter protections, that the building has not slowed down. In fact, in some places, it's unprecedented. And the reason is there's high demand and there's money to be made. So don't you believe it? And we expect the Judicial Proceedings Committee to take our concerns seriously. This bill has gotten more support across the state of Maryland than any other bill, I think, and it has gotten unprecedented support from the elected leaders of the state of Maryland, including the administration of Governor Wes Moore. Obviously, the majority of the Montgomery County delegation, the House of Delegates, which voted last year in favor of it, 96-37. And so we are concerned that some senators may have an interest in the landlord industry, and we don't want to see that influence have any bearing on this important piece of public policy that keeps renters stable in their apartments as long as they pay their rent and obey the rules. So with that, Pat Begum, do you have anything to say about renters voting?
So wait, sorry, Pat. Matt, we had two more questions in the chat.
Oh, yes.
So someone had asked, I think it's about code enforcement. Someone told them that it's only regarding mice and rats and not roaches. To my knowledge, yeah, roaches is included.
Vermin, all vermin.
Yeah, and any kind of pest falls under code enforcement jurisdiction. And then we had one other question. Someone asked, what if the landlord is not responding at all and you have emails and supported documents? Not sure what like the exact nature of the issue is. You can reach out to us and we can, find out more details and, if that warrants an ULTA complaint or that's just a conversation we need to have with them. But good to always keep documents of that. But yeah, please get in touch with us. I think I put our email in the chat. And then Matt, I direct this question to you. This same person's asking, what if the property doesn't have a license, but they've sent them a 10-day summary ejectment notice?
I'm not a lawyer, but it is our understanding that a landlord cannot take you to court if they don't have a license. So, you can use that as leverage, but I would urge you to reach out to the Maryland Legal Services Legal Aid Bureau to get their consultation on that, or to file a complaint with the Office of Landlord and Tenant Affairs. They also have the ability to provide legal advice from their own legal services. So I would just double check that, but it's our understanding you can't come to court with dirty hands, as they say. So if the landlord is not obeying the requirement to have a license, then they cannot utilize the court to enforce their right to rent or whatever it is, because they're not doing the right thing themselves. So that's our understanding. Is that it, Emily?
Yeah, Pat, go ahead.
Thanks, Pat.
Hello, everyone. As usual, I'd like to remind you that voting is very important. We must make our legislators understand that renters vote, and we need legislators who are willing to help renters. So please vote. Keep that in mind. When it's your time to vote, you need to go vote. That is what legislators understand. Stay active in your communities. And those are the only two weapons voters have. So when it's your time to vote, please vote. Do your due diligence by finding out which legislators are going to help or be on the side of renters. So please keep it in mind. We must vote.
And I think for anybody who's paying attention, we sure know that voting has consequences. Elections have consequences. Just look
Indeed.
around. So right now, it's extremely important that we be as active as ever. Thank you, Pat Beckham. Thanks, Max
Okay.
Wilbert. If you've got a notice under your door that inviting you to a town hall, it was probably because Max Wilbert put it there. He's our service year guy. You want to say anything, Max? He's a champion public speaker.
I didn't have anything prepared, so
All right. Well, if you got a notice under your door, it's probably because Max is doing some of our footwork for us. So we thank him for his service as part of the Governor Westmore Service Year program. So to all of our panelists, Senator Sarah Love, Delegate Julie Polakovich Carr, to Carmen Castro Conroy, and of course my staff, Emily Towie, our treasurer, keeps track of the money, Josh Fisher, Pat Beckham, David Mullins, Tim Wong, who's not with us tonight because he's working with a tenant, unfortunately facing an eviction and doing what we do all the time. And of course, Max Wilberg with the Service Year program. Thanks to all of you and good night.